Good evening, everyone, and thanks for joining us in our fourth town hall in a series of forums that we're providing this spring semester just to discuss all things COVID and how our schools are operating in these unusual circumstances. Over the past 2 weeks, we've held town halls focused on COVID-19 protocols, safety protocols. We focused on teaching and learning, both virtual and on campus in our current environment, and then also fine arts and athletics and how we are implementing health and safety protocols to keep our students and staff safe, but still engaged in participating in those activities to the extent that we can. Tonight, as you know, we are focused on special education services, and we appreciate all our participants for joining us tonight. We have an impressive panel of subject matter experts. This is actually our largest panel to date, but that's because we have everyone in their specialized areas. And this amazing team is led by our Executive Director of Special Education, Marie Gonzalez, and then of course our Chief of Teaching and Learning, Mandy Estes. Marie's team is here to answer specific questions, and we're also joined by two of our area superintendents, Natalie Nichols of the Stony Point Learning Community and John Yonker from the McNeil Learning Community. We also have our Chief Equity Officer, Mr. Dwayne Street, on the call. From our Board of Trustees, Dr. Mary Bone is joining us, so welcome, Trustee Bone. And of course, our acting superintendent, Dr. Daniel Presley. And as I said, we also have campus principals, and we value their perspective and input so much because they can talk about what some of these practices actually look like on the campus. We're also joined by two American Sign Language interpreters for those who might need it. They'll be taking turns signing for us. So feel free to pin that video if you need that. We're always excited to provide an avenue for two-way communication between our parent community and our district staff. Our panel tonight will answer questions about special education processes, procedures, and even give some examples of what those have looked like in some instances. But one thing we really want you to keep in mind about special education, the fundamental principle that services are individualized. So the information discussed tonight might differ depending on a given student's individualized needs. After a short presentation, we're going to take questions that'll be submitted through the Q&A function that you'll see there at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And kind of extra special tonight, not only will we be answering live, but we have a team of folks that are on Marie's team that will be answering in the written form in the Q&A box. So we're going to try to get to as many questions as possible by doing that. And just a reminder, as always, videos of all of our town halls are available on our website with both English and Spanish closed captioning. And this video will be added to that library as soon as possible, as soon as we can get that translation done. So you'll be able to go back and watch it. So now I'm going to turn it over to our Chief of Teaching and Learning, Ms. Mandy Estes.
Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We know that you have options for how you spend your time in the evening, and we're very grateful that you chose to join us. Last year, as all of you know, at spring break, our teachers and students left the building and didn't return for the remainder of the school year. And since then, I was reflecting today on all that we've endured collectively, a divisive election, a deadly virus, personal losses that many have experienced, isolation, a change to the cadence of our daily lives, all those things that all of us have endured. But most of all, we know that you're here tonight worried about your kids. And I also want to tell you, so are we. I want you to rest assured that the team in front of you, this large team that's here on the call tonight, is here because they care about your kids, because we care about your kids. And because our commitment to your kids hasn't changed because of a pandemic. We hold ourselves to high expectations. We know you hold us to high expectations, and you should. We're here tonight to answer your questions, to hopefully give you one thing that you can worry a little bit less about. But we also want to encourage you that our staff on every campus across this district is eager to answer your questions and to respond to your concerns. And so please don't let those lie. Please get in contact with the campus team or with us at the district level and let us help you put your worries at least down a little bit of a notch. And so with that, I'm proud to turn this presentation over tonight to our Executive Director of Special Education, Marie Gonzalez, and her team. They'll lead us through a few slides. We want to have plenty of time to answer your questions as well. And so Marie, take it from here.
Thanks so much, Mandy. Good evening, everybody. As Jenny said, my name is Marie Gonzalez. I'm the Executive Director of Special Education and 504 for our district. We're going to start tonight's updates with some information about evaluations. Marisa, you want to go ahead and advance the slide? Thanks. The world of special education has a lot of required components, and one of the most important of those is called Child Find. Child Find is the responsibility that we have as a district to identify students who have both a disability and a required need for specialized instruction as a result of that disability. That identification process always involves formal evaluation, but for the first time this year, because of the pandemic, we've had to put in place health safety precautions for all of our in-person testing. What does that include? Well, both the evaluator and the student are expected to complete a self-screening prior to the evaluation appointment. We do require masks be worn by both the student and the evaluator throughout the duration of the appointment. We also have face shields available. And there's a plexiglass divider between the student and the evaluator in most instances. Exceptions to that rule are some evaluations where the test administrator really has to be more physically interactive with the student. Those evaluations include things like occupational therapy, physical therapy, adapted PE. And when that's the case, that evaluator is equipped with additional PPE. In addition, we have adopted a new platform for many of the tests that we're giving. We're utilizing iPads for the first time across our district. And the iPads have proven to be more engaging for students as opposed to the more traditional paper and pencil tests that we've always used before this year. They're more engaging for kiddos, and they're also more efficient for our test administrators when it comes to scoring the evaluations that they've given. In addition, those iPads reduce the amount of material that have to be handled by both the examiner and the student during testing, and they're so easy to wipe down. So it's easy to disinfect those iPads between student uses, just like we're doing with desktops, and for the plexiglass dividers between each student. We do have some parents who at this point are still not yet comfortable sending their student for in-person testing. And I want to emphasize that that's absolutely okay. That's your right as a parent. While many parts of a full individual evaluation can be completed virtually, there are always going to be some components that we can only conduct in person. So even though the federal government hasn't waived our evaluation timelines, we as a district, we're going to continue to honor a parent's decision to delay in-person evaluation during the pandemic until that parent is comfortable doing so.
Thanks, Marie. Hi, my name is Summer Neiman. I'm the area director serving special education in 504 in the Stony Point vertical learning community. As we moved into this school year, we knew that our students and staff would be planning for a year like no other. As individual 504 committees and art committees began to meet, the teams made decisions about what accommodations and/or specially designed instruction would be necessary to help students access the curriculum. Our meetings this year include a contingency plan that outlines how these services are different when accessed virtually versus in person.
Thank you, Summer. Good evening. My name is Angela Solis. I am the area director serving the special education in 504 for the Cedar Ridge vertical learning community. Student progress continues to be monitored by our campuses based on your child's IEP goals and objectives. We have special education teachers as well as related service providers that support monitoring goals and objectives. Our ARD committees are tasked at looking at student progress and reviewing data from last spring. If there is data indicating a loss in skills, the ARD committee is able to support developing a plan. If you have concerns regarding your child's progress, please reach out to your child's case manager. If you can click on the next slide, please.
Thank you, Angela. My name is Jennifer Cole, and I'm the area director serving the Round Rock learning community. The Parents Guide was developed by our own curriculum department, and it includes documents which are designed to provide parents with information about what your own child will be learning at each grade level or the core content areas for the secondary level. These guides are aligned to the TEKS, or the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills, and they are available in both English and Spanish. Because our goal of special education is really to increase access to general education content, these guides are a very user-friendly tool for you as parents to learn the grade level expectations for your own child. Also included within each guide are helpful hints for assisting your child with at-home virtual learning, as well as tips for speaking with your child's teacher. Please click on the link. As you can see, the guide is expandable by grade level. You can select your child's grade and then click on your preferred language. And all of these guides can be accessed through the Round Rock ISD website, and they're located on the curriculum page. Please return to the main slide.
Thank you, Jen. We wanted to provide parents a glimpse of what our teachers have access to. The virtual instructional toolkit was developed for special education teachers to provide examples of accommodations and differentiated instruction for accessing virtual learning. This is a tool that has been shared multiple times with our special education teachers as an optional resource to help navigate and support their individual student needs. If you can please click on that link, thank you. This is an example of how teachers can support independent practice in person as well as virtually. We have similar examples for other instructional areas as well. This is just a sample. You can click on the next slide, thank you. This is the sensory room slide. It's an example of a teacher resource for supporting student sensory needs virtually. If you can go to the next slide, please. This is an example of one of the slides representing resources for our teachers to use for supporting virtual accommodations. This is not an exhaustive list, nor necessarily appropriate for every student. Snap and Read is an example of a tool that every student in Round Rock ISD has access to for supporting oral administration. Another example of a virtual accommodation is the virtual manipulatives. If you can please click on the virtual manipulatives link, please. Some students might need this tool as part of their individual accommodations. This is one example. If you can please return to the main slide. Every campus utilizes various resources to support meeting individual students' needs. The case manager selects tools and resources based on students' instructional needs. Campuses utilize the district vetting process to determine alignment to instruction and campus needs.
Hello, I'm Kimberly Berry Corey, and I serve as the Director for Dyslexia Support Services here in Round Rock. At the beginning of this school year, our district dyslexia department released the digital dyslexia guidebook. Could you please click on the link? This resource was really created with our parents and staff in mind, and it serves kind of like a one-stop shop for navigating dyslexia services in Round Rock. Here you'll find definitions and information regarding what dyslexia and related disorders are, information on our referral and evaluation processes, the types of training and programs we offer in Round Rock, as well as our state governing documents. And a link to this document can be found right on our dyslexia department homepage. Thank you.
Thanks, Kimberly. Last spring, TEA waived the administration of the STAR and end of course assessments for school districts. This year, TEA has released an extended testing window for schools to administer the STAR assessments in grades 3 through 8 and the end of course assessments for algebra, biology, English 1, English 2, and U.S. history. Students will continue to be able to utilize accommodations needed as determined by their individual 504 or ARD committees. Schools are currently planning for student participation and will be in contact with families. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Summer. My name is Heidi Lambert. I'm Director of SPED in 504, serving the McNeil VLC. Our team makes it a priority to build relationships with campus administrators and staff. Within our vertical learning communities, these relationships are foundational in respect to communication and collaboration, all in the best interest of the students that we serve. When challenges present themselves on campuses, the relationships we have formulated help campuses to feel supported and to ensure positive outcomes for students. As a team, we support campuses and administrators in the areas of professional development, art, IEP support, and technical assistance. We remain available during this most unusual school year to effectively support those who are serving students.
Thanks, Heidi. Good evening. I'm Jackie Hartle, Area Director serving special education in 504 for the Westwood Learning Community. Building and maintaining relationships with families is a priority for all educators in Round Rock ISD. For 504 accommodations, your child's administrative team is your best contact for questions and feedback on his or her accommodations. For special education services, your child's case manager is your direct contact for questions and feedback on your child's individualized education plan. Students' teachers communicate frequently with families through email, Schoology, Home Access Center, and phone calls. Our related service providers reach out to families through surveys, emails, and during virtual sessions to gain parent input on how our students are progressing on their activities. Open communication is necessary to serve students well in the best of times, and it is now imperative to keep our students moving forward academically, behaviorally, and adaptively. As always, your campus administrators and our director team are available to help find answers to your questions and address any concerns.
As Jackie just said, the relationship between school and parents has never been more important. One of our more formalized partnerships with parents is through our Special Education Parent Advisory Council. That's also frequently abbreviated by the acronym CPAC. CPAC is an amazing, positive organization. They seek to support fellow parents as they learn to navigate the world of special education in 504. And CPAC partners with us as a district team by letting our district staff share updates, and then they in turn provide us feedback from the parent perspective. Our council looks at a lot of different ways to try to engage parents. They have monthly council meetings, and those are open to anybody who'd like to participate. They schedule presentations by guest speakers on relevant topics, and our CPAC council schedules social events with the goal of connecting with fellow parents in a more informal setting. In addition, CPAC's goal is to have a representative established at each campus who can then be the point person for that parent community. CPAC also has as its goal communication with fellow parents, and some of the ways they do that, they have a monthly newsletter, they have a Facebook page, and our CPAC council has a website that's linked to the Round Rock ISD homepage. If you look under the A to Z index, it's right there. It's got its own line item separate from special education. I want to take this opportunity to invite parents who are listening tonight to an upcoming presentation that CPAC is sponsoring. We have our special education instructional coach team who are coming to do a presentation on how we're providing accommodations and modifications to students in the virtual environment. That presentation is scheduled for February 16th at 5:30 p.m. If you go on Facebook and search for CPAC, that's how you can probably easiest access the Zoom link to that meeting if you're interested. Also, coming up in March, we're holding a virtual transition fair that'll have information on a wide variety of topics that are specific to planning for life after high school for our students with disabilities. The links to both of those things are, again, available on our Round Rock ISD CPAC website. It's on the events tab. And again, you can find that under the A to Z index on our district homepage. So I encourage you to look up CPAC and learn more about this great organization. I want to close out our presentation with this. One of the goals of offering the town hall tonight was to provide parents the opportunity for two-way communication. And we are about to segue to the Q&A portion of the meeting. In addition, I do want to remind our community that parents of students eligible for special education services have access to probably the most formalized two-way communication possible. Parents can request an ARD meeting at any time, and that same holds true for 504. Each student in special education also has a special education teacher who's assigned to be case manager, and that person is an excellent point of contact for both our students and our families. So if you have questions about your child's placement and services, I encourage you to reach out to your child's case manager. Beyond that, you are also welcome to contact your child's campus administrator or any one of these fine folks who spoke tonight, the area directors for special education in 504 and for dyslexia. We welcome your contact and your questions anytime. If you'll go ahead, Maritza, and advance the slide. At this point, I will turn things back over to Jenny for our Q&A.
Thank you so much, Marie, and thanks for everyone who presented. That was great information. I introduced everyone but myself. I'm Jenny Lacoste Caputo, Chief of Public Affairs and Communications for Round Rock ISD, and my team, we're happy to be able to bring you these town halls on different topics. And if you have suggestions of different ways that we can reach out and engage, you can email us at community_relations@roundrockisd.org. For those that joined us maybe a little late, I just want to let you know that the way you can share your question with us is you'll see a little Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. So please use that function there to put a question in. We have folks that are actually answering the questions in real time, written answers to those questions, but then also we'll be asking some live as well. And we did provide an opportunity for questions in advance. So we're going to start with one of those. And Angela, I think this one might be coming to you, but anyone else can jump in. Can more individualized support be provided to students in virtual asynchronous learning sessions?
Yes, we can. If it is appropriate for the student, we absolutely want to make sure that we're providing individual support for students. One thing that I definitely ask is that our families reach out to the campus case manager to be able to ask them what kind of supports can be provided and provide any information regarding concerns that they have about the type of supports. We do have the contingency plan that can also help support any virtual needs and what the implementation of their IEP goals and objectives and service plan will look like during virtual services.
Thank you for that. Next question, Jackie, I think this one's for you. How does the district support students with autism who don't qualify for special education?
This is a great question because it really highlights the continuum of services that are available for students in Round Rock ISD. We certainly have students in Round Rock who have disabilities, but who do not require individual accommodations through 504 or specially designed instruction through special education in order to access the curriculum. And it is the goal of special educators all over the world to move students toward that level of independence each and every day. We encourage the student, depending on the age or the parent or guardian, to reach out to your child's teacher to set a time to discuss what she or he is struggling with in a given subject or a class. Now, during that meeting, the teacher can discuss the tools that are already in place for all students to access in order to make progress on those concepts. And if in that discussion, it's determined that those tools are already being utilized by your child and they're still struggling, you and the teacher may determine additional tools or strategies that can be tried. You may decide to move forward then for a more formalized process to determine if 504 accommodations or specially designed instruction needs to be considered in order for your child to really access the curriculum given his or her disability. This is a good time to remind families that at any time, parents can request 504 accommodations if a child has a documented impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities or a special education evaluation. In order to qualify for special education, a student must be found eligible under at least one of the 13 qualifying conditions and have an educational need for specialized instruction.
Thank you so much. Jumping to a question from tonight, and Summer, I think you might be best poised to answer this. And I also want to encourage any of our principals at any time, if you have something to add, please feel free to jump in. But Summer, this one's for you. What is a contingency plan and how is it benefiting students this school year? What will contingency plans look like moving into next year?
So a contingency plan is a plan that the team puts into place, either the 504 team or the art committee. When we meet and we look at what a student needs for in-person instruction, we develop that plan based on the data that we have. And we recognize that some of our students, for various reasons, will need to access their education this year virtually. And we know that virtual instruction looks different than in-person instruction. So our art plans and our 504 plans are based upon a student being in person. The contingency plan is for what that would look like, or what that instruction could look like, what their accommodations might look like if they're accessing their education virtually, or if there was a situation where the classes were closed, or if we were quarantining. The contingency plan recognizes that there's going to be a difference, and it's difficult to go ahead and predict what that's going to look like next school year. I think back to a year ago, I would have never predicted that what happened last spring break would be happening. And so we will continue to develop contingency plans as we have a difference between virtual and in-person instruction.
Thanks so much. Back to one of our questions we received in advance, and I think perhaps Jennifer or Kimberly might be want to tackle this one. Can we offer virtual assessment for dysgraphia?
Hop in and take that one and discuss kind of a broad overview for all of our evaluations, and then kick it to Kimberly to give a few specifics on dysgraphia. Like Marie mentioned in the slides, we are absolutely going to honor any parent's right if your child is a virtual learner, and if you're not comfortable bringing them to campus for an in-person assessment, that is definitely your right as a parent, and we are going to honor that. When we look at any evaluation, of course, that's going to be individualized to the specific student and what the areas of concern are, and campus evaluation teams are going to be compiling an individualized evaluation plan for your student. We consider each area and what can be completed virtually. There are some components that can be completed virtually, for instance, a student interview. We have certain components of a speech evaluation, for instance, which can be completed virtually. That spoken language assessment really lends itself well to a virtual assessment. We have other components, for instance, anything that requires a written response from the student, that are much more difficult to evaluate virtually. Many of these tests that we're administering for a special education evaluation are standardized, meaning they're administered in the same way to all students with the same directions and same materials. So when we start moving further and further away from that standardization, then we really have concerns around our test validity and reliability, meaning, are we still testing what the test was intended to measure? And would this be the same if we did it in person, if we did it tomorrow and today across time? Would these results be the same? Several of the virtual platforms that are currently available, one of the more popular ones, doesn't completely eliminate that need for in-person testing. The student's able to complete most of the testing virtually, but then they do still have to come in person for any subtest that requires a written response. So we are still, by some of the platforms, limited in what we can complete virtually. Of course, we're still very new to virtual testing, so we're always watching in the field for updates with that, and we're in close contact with our regional service center on any updates they might have with that. But we really, here at Round Rock, it's important to us that we protect that accuracy of the evaluation data, because we're using that to make such important decisions. We're using it, like Jackie spoke of earlier, to make eligibility decisions of the 13 enumerated disability conditions in Texas. We're also using it to design an individualized education program for the child. So we want to protect the accuracy of that test data. So we're making very solid decisions around that test data. What I can also tell you for the special education evaluations is, once we do complete those, and again, that's going to be on the parent timeline, that when you're comfortable as a parent producing your child for that in-person component, then once that evaluation is completed and we go to what's called an initial ARD meeting, where a full committee does meet, then we're going to be considering the amount of delay that occurred, that the evaluation was delayed when we could not access the child. And we're really going to be considering, as a team, do we need to develop a compensatory service plan to account for that missed time? So that's something we're doing on our end to help account for that missed service time. And please, in the interim, reach out to us, reach out to your campus teacher, your campus administrator. Please reach out to me directly, any of us on this call. What we can do in the meantime is also meet with you about your specific concerns for your student, and we can develop interim supports in the meantime while we're waiting, whether that be accommodations, access to virtual study halls. We can talk about an interim support plan in the meantime. And I don't know, Kimberly, if you have anything to add on that dysgraphia element to that question.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jen, so much for doing such a beautiful job of explaining the difference between the oral pieces of our evaluation and the written pieces. And for dysgraphia in particular, when we think about the inability to capture authentic demonstration of writing virtually, that's really at the heart of why we can't move forward at this moment with dysgraphia evaluations virtually. Many of the components in our assessments must be observable during the evaluation, and therefore requires the assessor to be able to handle and observe handwriting strokes and manipulation of words on paper. This can be a really difficult task to accomplish via virtual or computer evaluation. But I do want to reiterate that we are continuing to look at the research and seeking the very best in our evaluation tools. And if a digital dysgraphia assessing tool has been created, it has not become available, like Jen said, to our service centers or to local school districts. Our evaluators have carefully reviewed and considered every piece of our evaluations that could be possibly performed virtually. And at this time, the student interview portion could be considered best practice to go virtually. But again, we are monitoring that very closely and honoring our parents and their decision-making around around our in-person assessments.
Thanks, Jen and Kimberly, appreciate that. Angela, I think this one's coming back to you. Are compensatory services being considered for students who did not progress as expected while attending virtual classes for the school year?
Thank you, Jenny. Yes, and actually Jen mentioned compensatory service just a little bit ago involving the initial evaluations, and we absolutely are looking at compensatory services for all of our students as part of that 7 weeks in the spring where we had a closure. We are actually looking at if any of those students had loss of skills. And if so, we're looking at if we need to mitigate that impact of that loss of skill. Then the ARD committee is really tasked at determining what that would look like for compensatory service and if it's needed for that student. One of the things that's important is that it can and it should be different student by student. And it is definitely important that the ARD committee is the one that's collecting data as well as parent input to be able to make those decisions. Did anybody else have something to add to that?
Thanks so much. Jackie, I think this one might be for you, but some of our principals might want to chime in. Y'all let me know. But how do we handle disruptive student behaviors in a general ed setting?
I'll give an overview of our philosophy and our plan, and then if any principals want to chime in, I would welcome it. Let's start with disruptive behavior in the classroom can be very upsetting, and we recognize that. What we want you to know is that in Round Rock ISD, we understand that behavior is communication, and it is as important to directly teach as math and language arts. In the realm of behavior, our primary objective is to teach the skills of self-regulation, listening to understand, and effective communication. And we want to do that for all of our students. We start from early childhood through graduation. Social emotional learning is directly taught throughout the school year at both the elementary and middle school levels. And then at the high school level, our counseling teams offer a variety of mental health supports for our students, such as coping with anxiety, conflict resolution, and establishing and maintaining healthy boundaries, for example. So just like with math and language arts, there are going to be some students who need additional attention to the social emotional areas of their life. We have behavior interventionists, we have instructional behavior coaches, campus staff, as well as administrators, such as assistant principals and counselors, who assist the teacher and respond to disruptive behavior in the school setting. So at this point, the educational team, the parent, and the student work to understand what the function of that behavior is, and then they work on the alternative choices that that student can make that are more effective to get that student's needs met. So in order to repair the relationship that's strained due to the disruptive or harmful behavior, our campuses employ restorative practices, we have repair conversations, and we give students opportunities to make things right. Certainly, there are consequences given when the student code of conduct is broken, and administrators determine appropriate, equitable consequences with a focus on giving the student an opportunity to learn from his or her mistake. Any behavioral concern is unique, and we work diligently with experts in our district to address the social emotional needs of our students and staff, both the students who have disrupted and everyone else involved in the situation. Does anyone else want to add anything?
I think what Jackie said is very important, that it's a communication first. We see student behavior as they are trying to communicate something. Sorry, I'm Brooke Elarms, principal at Pond Springs Elementary, so I can speak to it maybe at the younger stages. And definitely when students are acting in a disruptive way, they're trying to communicate something to us. In an elementary, they often don't have the words to communicate what they're trying to say. And so our first step is to be proactive. We want to know as much about the student, what types of situations may we find ourselves in a repetitive pattern, and then we want to mitigate those instances. Students will have a full FBA completed, their functional behavioral assessment, and we'll develop a plan. And then we follow that plan and tweak it as we need to. And we want to keep all students safe. And so we want to keep all students accessing the curriculum as much as possible. And yes, there may be times when it does require a removal. It may just be that a student needs to take a break in a different setting that is not as, they don't feel as much pressure or as high of expectations to perform a certain skill or task. And so then we want to, give them that break and then have re-entry in a calm way to the classroom, so that learning can continue for everyone. And as Jackie said, it's taking on a case-by-case situation, and making sure that the safety for all students is there.
I think Ms. Sharp, did you want to add something as well?
Yes, hi, I'm Denise Sharp. I'm the principal at Forest Creek Elementary School. I want to just add a little bit as far as if we're addressing a student who is not yet identified in special education, but still shows behaviors in the general ed classroom, we have 3 tiers of support. So tier 1 is general classroom. We call that core instruction. Those students are usually supported just through the classroom teacher and the routines and behavior supports that they have in the classroom. As if a student is showing that they need something beyond just what the general education teacher can provide, we move to tier 2. That's decided through our SST process, where we take a look at all of the data. We talk about what we're seeing, what we're observing, what's been tried, what's working, what's not working. And at the level 2, we surround them with support from our behavior intervention staff. Often they'll have an individual behavior report card, we call it, where we can monitor smaller increments throughout the day and monitor, is there a particular time when this behavior is happening more often? It could be a subject area that they're struggling in. It could be a less structured time like lunch or recess or transitions. And all of this is important information for us to have so that we can create a plan that best supports that student and their needs. Along with that, we also often provide them with social skills where we are doing direct teach of replacement behaviors. Instead of the behavior that we're seeing, we're trying to teach them some replacement skills to utilize, such as take a break, ask for a break, go to a calming corner, or use a calming routine. It could be a squishy tool or something like that. So we're just using all the tools we have at our access to provide support for the student. And finally, if that is not quite enough, or the student is identified for special education, they're escalated to tier 3, which means that we surround them with the most support we can with our individual education plans.
Thank you. And I think Ms. Winters, maybe from the middle school perspective, had something to add. You're muted, Kim.
Sorry. I'm Kim Winters. I'm the principal at Pearson Ranch Middle School. And I just wanted to reiterate really kind of what they said. It happens at the middle school level as well, about making sure we know our students and researching why they're having those behaviors, looking for any kind of patterns, being really intentional about teaching them those replacement behaviors. And I think really it's very much a team approach. And as long as we are all working really closely together, it's a super powerful team. And I just think it's really important that you are very thoughtful about your restorative practices and repairing those relationships with the students that have been involved and with the adults in the building as well. So thank you.
Thank you. This next question, maybe Jennifer or Summer, I find it a fascinating one, and I think many parents have this question. What is the difference between a medical diagnosis of autism and an educational diagnosis of autism?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that one. And I love the
Either
question
one of
as
us.
well, Jenny. Because we have at least 4 of us on this call who are either LSSPs or diagnosticians by training. So all of us love talking X's and O's of evaluation and assessment. So thank you for this question. It is a good one because it can get very confusing. There are different models for clinical and educational evaluations, specifically in regards to identification of autism. The Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, which is used pretty heavily for the clinical foundation and their eligibility criteria, has changed. I mean, they have modified the criteria and modified the definition of autism, as well as removed certain portions and added others. So we've had a little bit of fluidity in the medical definition, which, you know, that's something, it's good that we've updated that with more research and our findings, that we are updating that. But that's one area where parents might see a change or a difference between a private clinical evaluation and an educational evaluation. Another component is for educational evaluations. We use a multidisciplinary team approach, which typically involves an LSSP, sometimes a diagnostician, a speech and language pathologist, and then any other evaluators as needed for that particular evaluation. Of course, the general education teacher is always included. Sometimes we include occupational therapists as well if there's fine motor or sensory concerns. For Texas, for educational, I can tell you our definition is really looking at a developmental disability and verbal, nonverbal, or social interaction skills. And with that, we do tend to see, sometimes we're looking for other markers, as well as restrictive or repetitive behaviors, any difficulty or challenges with transitions, or any sensory difficulties that the student might have. We're also educationally, we have a 2-prong eligibility criteria, where the first prong of that is really looking at, is there a disability condition for one of the 13 enumerated areas of eligibility in Texas? Is there a disability? So autism, in this case, that's medically, they're really focusing on that first prong. Yes or no, does the child have autism? Educationally, we have another layer to that, a second prong that we call it, that really is part of the evaluation. And then the ARD committee is really trying to consider, is there an educational need for specially designed instruction because of the disability? So because of this child's autism, is there a need for special education services and specially designed instruction? So we have an extra layer built into our evaluations that we're looking at. We always consider multiple sources of data. We're looking at direct testing, observations of the student across the educational setting, interviews with both parents and teachers, rating scales, we're reviewing records. And with that records review, we are always required to consider anything that the parent wants to provide. So if you as a parent have a private medical evaluation, it is your choice whether or not you provide that to the school staff to be considered. We certainly cannot require you to, but if you do choose to, then we will consider that as part of our evaluation. We will consider all of the components, and in some cases there are, say for instance, testing that we're able to accept, and then we don't have to repeat the same testing for your child and put them through that for round 2. So if you are willing to provide that, we will always consider that medical evaluation as part of our evaluation. And lastly, it's helpful to know for parents out there listening, and if you've had this wonder, the medical diagnosis is not required in order for your student to qualify for an educational diagnosis of autism. So we have a lot of students who have an educational eligibility of autism that don't have that medical diagnosis. So I don't want any parents to think they have to go pursue that medically. That's certainly a parent choice. We're always willing and able to complete the evaluation educationally with or without the medical evaluation.
Summer, did you have anything to add?
No, I think Jennifer was able to sum it up very nicely. Just the major difference between as a school, us looking at educational disability and identification, and it is different than the medical piece. We do not require the medical piece for autism, but if a parent chooses to bring that to us, we can consider it as one of the pieces of evidence in our part of our evaluation.
Okay, thanks. We have a dyslexia question coming for Kimberly, I'm going to guess. How is the district conducting the mandated dyslexia screeners for students in kindergarten and first grade?
That is a great and very timely question, as we just finished up first grade dyslexia and reading difficulty screening on Friday, the 29th. Our district this year chose to put into place a reading system of support through iStation. And in iStation, there is the universal screener and progress monitoring tool of iSIP. And it met all the criteria that the dyslexia handbook holds us to for screening our students in kindergarten and first grade for reading difficulties and or characteristics of dyslexia. So we put that into play. We trained our DSPs, who then in turn worked with each of their campus first grade teams to ensure that our students took that assessment in the month of January. We rolled it out, I believe, the first Monday we were back, and we finished it up on Friday. So our district teams at each campus will begin to look at that data over the next week or two, and we'll be notifying parents by the end of February for first grade. And then we're going to implement that same system again in April for our kindergarten.
Thank you so much.
And a lot of questions. Oh, sorry, Jenny.
No, go ahead, Bert.
I was just gonna say, I'm sure there's lots of questions of what does this look like in a virtual setting versus in person. And I can say that I did observe one of my first grade virtual teacher. She had her students in a small group setting during one of their small group times. And we had a group of dyslexia interventionists and other interventionists come, and she sent students one at a time into a breakout session. She was able to continue teaching their small group learning, and students worked one-on-one with an interventionist to complete portions of that needed adult assistance and adult recording. They were able to do it, send the kid back out of the breakout room function. Students rejoined their class, continued, and another student would join a breakout session. And so we were able to perform that for our first grade students in, both in person and virtual, and the kindergarten window is not open yet.
Thanks so much. That's so helpful to actually hear how it happened on a campus. I appreciate that. Either Marie or Jackie, I'll let you guys rock, paper, scissors for it. Will on-campus learning continue to be an option for students in self-contained classrooms, even if general ed goes 100% virtual?
Yes, we are. There are a lot of factors that go into a decision to go virtual 100%. And we have to look at what shifted, what changed to make that happen. But I will tell you that our goal is to offer in-person learning for our self-contained classrooms as often as possible. So as long as it's possible and safe, we're going to work real hard to do that because we understand the importance of it for some of our students.
Thanks, Jackie. And I just want to piggyback on that by saying, even though none of us has a crystal ball, we really can't predict what's going to be coming our way in the near or further down the road, near future, further down the road. I want to brag on our central office administrators all the way up to the top rung. It has been a real high priority for Dr. Presley, all the on down, that we make sure that we're serving our most vulnerable learners in an environment that meets their needs to the best of our ability. So we definitely acknowledge that there are some learners who virtual is just not ever going to be a good fit, no matter how we try to stretch it and pull it and really make it as individualized as possible. And so, yes, I want to echo what Jackie said. It's absolutely our goal, and there are some things that are outside of our control. So in the event of perhaps, say, if the governor were to issue a complete shelter-in-place order again, like he did last spring, we wouldn't really have a lot of say in that. But short of that, we're going to make our best efforts.
I know that I don't think we have a principal on the call whose school has had to close because of health department recommendations yet. But we did early in the year, we'll bring back our most vulnerable students early. I'm just curious from a principal perspective, how would that look on a campus in terms of safety protocols? the majority of your learners were virtual, but you're still providing those services?
Ms. Caputo, I'm willing to take a shot at that. I'm Dr. Mario Acosta. I'm the principal at Westwood High School. And correct, we at Westwood have been fortunate to not have been closed by the county health authorities. However, we have our most vulnerable and fragile students on campus there, and we have had to be creative in that environment just this semester in order to ensure that we continue to maintain the environment in person extremely safe for everyone, including our staff, while still providing effective instruction for those students virtually. And so what I can tell you, and I do understand that this is the model that's being used, at least at a few of our high schools that partner with us at Westwood, there is a really good teaming of the staff to where some of the staff directs the content virtually via the platform, Schoology and Google Meets. And then we piggyback that with our hourly employees, as well as some of the teachers that are physically in the building. So we can better spread out and better take care of those kids that are fragile on campus, but yet keep the content meaningful for all of the students, whether or not they're virtual or in person. So it's been a real good partnership. I do know that there's been times that teachers from McNeil have helped us at Westwood, vice versa. We're really pulling our resources and acting as one big unit across our district when it comes to, especially when it comes to our medically fragile students. If we run into a situation where, just hypothetically, if, for example, Westwood were closed, we haven't been, again, knock on wood, I know that then we would be using the resources at other schools to all piggyback together to cover down and make sure that students who needed in-person support were supported, while at the same time keeping the virtual learning going. So this is just a little window in what we've had to balance at the high school level, especially with our medically fragile students. So it's worked really well as a team.
Thanks, Dr. Acosta. I appreciate that. Angela, this one is for you. Is data tracking standardized across the district for virtual learners? What training is being provided?
And we absolutely have data methods that we use to support tracking our virtual learners. Our instructional team has been tasked at supporting our special education teachers through our PLCs. At the beginning of the year, we were holding them weekly, and now we are holding those still monthly. Our staff has been they've been proactive at making sure that they're providing them timely information and supporting the district's resources that we have available, but as well as looking at the fact that our students are individualized, as we said before. So we definitely have to take in the fact that because their services are individualized, our data tracking is also individualized based on what we're tracking for. And so that's an important aspect that we have to take into consideration, but our instructional team has supported our teachers and provides drop-in support sessions and office hours to make sure our teachers' needs are getting met.
Thanks so much. Marie, this one is for you, I think. How do I go about requesting an evaluation for special education services?
It's a great question. Certainly navigating special education can be a little bit of a daunting task. There's so many rules and hoops to jump through that are all very necessary and well-intentioned and well-founded, but it can feel a little daunting. Essentially, the best thing a parent can do if they want to request an evaluation for their child is to contact their child's campus administrator. Once we receive a request in writing, that campus administrator knows to reach out to their diagnostician or their LSSP and say, hey, I got a parent request. Let's talk about next steps. And all of our DIAGs and LSSPs receive training every year on how to guide that campus team from there. It involves sitting down with parents and talking about what are the concerns, and then making sure that we're getting informed consent to take next steps, such as an evaluation. I definitely want to invite some of our folks on our director team who are evaluators, like Jen or Summer. If you want to fill in any blanks that I may have left in that explanation, I welcome it.
I think you covered the basis there, that whenever we receive a request from a parent or from a staff member that there is a child find issue and that we need to look at whether or not a student qualifies for services, to invite their LSSP, which is a licensed specialist in school psychology, or an educational diagnostician from the campus to meet with the team, review the data, and look at what are some of the next steps that we need to take as far as an evaluation is concerned. When we're getting consent for an evaluation, we are looking at the 13 categories that the federal government has established, and then each state, for Texas, TEA outlines what those qualifications or what are the necessary parts of that evaluation, who needs to be a part of it, what data needs to be collected, so that we have the correct information to make some pretty important decisions about a student's educational career and the plans that are going to help them be successful. The whole purpose of that evaluation is to help identify the strengths and weaknesses of a student and to be able to give recommendations. Ms. Sharp did a great job earlier outlining the 3 tiers that are at a campus. And then we know that there are certain students who may need more than that. It may be 504 is what the student needs, and they can get accommodations that will help them access the curriculum, or it might be specially designed instruction where they have that disability, but they also have that need for specially designed instruction, and they need an IEP to be able to access their curriculum.
Thanks. Jen, anything to add, or did that cover it?
No, I think those two covered it beautifully. I don't have anything else to add.
Okay, great. I'd like to share with the participants, I mentioned that you see support staff boxes here, and those are highly trained, really smart folks who are also answering questions. And this is a bit of a different panel because these are highly technical and complicated questions. And it's just great to have all these subject matter experts in one place. But Angela, if it feels like I'm picking on you, it's because they're also letting me know who's the expert.
That's okay.
So it's not me, it's your team. So this one's for you. How does an ARD committee determine if a child requires extended school year services?
Jenny, that's a great question. And I know many of our families have that question this year, especially looking at their child's needs. One of the things that's important is extended school year service, ESY, has the same criteria for eligibility as it has in the past. A student's educational team, which includes the parent, gathers data to determine if regression has occurred during the breaks that we have, which would include our Thanksgiving break, our Christmas break, and then of course, upcoming spring break, and look at the student is able to recover those skills, the same skills that they had prior to the break in a reasonable period of time. It's important to note that ESY is really looking at maintenance of skills, whereas I know some of our families are also looking at compensatory service, which really is focused on those 7 weeks shut down in spring. And that's really looking at progress with students having loss of skills. So there's 2 different things going on there. And I think it's important that the families reach out to their campus case manager and express any concerns that they have, as well as to make sure that they've looked at their ARD as a guide to help support talking through the data and the decisions for this. The ARD committee is going to be the best group to be able to come together to look at that data and make those decisions for ESY. Additionally, if any parents have any other questions, I also support ESY, so I would be happy to also talk through that with them as well.
Thank you. This one is probably good for Dr. Acosta or perhaps one of our area superintendents, Ms. Nichols or Mr. Yonker, to answer. How is credit recovery being addressed for virtual learners at the high school level? What supports are being offered for struggling seniors? I know that's a big concern for some parents.
Yes, ma'am, I'll start, and then I know the superintendents can piggyback. This is an initiative that we are all working. Again, it's a very timely question because it's a very timely topic. We continue to have weekly collaborations across the district with our area superintendents and the high school principals and our teams about credits and some of the students who have struggled to earn credits, particularly in semester 1. Our goal as a district is to ensure that we provide some just-in-time opportunities. It's a language we've used in years past, but the opportunity for students to try and repair their credit right now in the spring semester so as to ensure that they earn the full year's credit by the end of May, and not to allow the gap to exist heading into summer, to try and recover as much of that during the spring semester and not let it become a gap. And so we're working right now in partnership with Success High School. They've done a great deal of work over there at Success High School. Miss Stewart and her staff, which of course they work the world of credit recovery pretty regularly, right? And so they have really done a good job of getting out in front and really partnering with us at the comprehensive high schools so that we have good prescriptive options. And you know, that word has been used a lot tonight. So whether the student is in special education or in general education, the idea, particularly, you're right, for our seniors, is to say what specific gaps do they have, not only in their essential skills, but also in credit that they might have missed from semester one or maybe even previous semesters. And we want to build them sort of an individualized education plan using our Edgenuity platform, using teachers in the district, right, to provide them with some timely remediation and reassessment in order to try and recover those credits right now here in the, you know, in the early part of the spring, and as we move into the middle part of the spring. It does become extremely paramount that our senior cohort, you know, is given every opportunity to recover those credits. And so I would pass it on to the area soups to add anything beyond that.
Let me, John Yonker, Area Superintendent for McNeil Learning Community. I'm going to jump in from a slightly different angle, and that is for parents to recognize that you as a parent of a senior who is scheduled to graduate in 2021, you cannot be overly involved. This is the time that if you have these concerns and not having the discussions with the appropriate staff, the assistant principal and the counselor team is probably your best place to start. You have to have those conversations. There is no worse conversation than for a principal to meet with a parent or grandparents or family days before graduation with horrible news that it's not going to happen. You've got to get involved, and this is the time to be doing and having those meetings. And Mr. Acosta is right. It's credit repair, credit recovery, Success High School. There's all kinds of different things, but we just can't allow time to run out. So this is the time for all students, of parents that have these concerns. And there are teams of people watching the data, but keep in mind, they're watching hundreds and hundreds of kids, and you have yours. So please do not let any more days pass if you have these concerns without having these discussions. And what we do about it, it'd be too difficult to answer because there's hundreds of different responses based on the scenario that has been created. So from parent to other parents, do not allow your student to convince you that parents don't have these discussions. They do.
Thanks, John. That's great advice. Ms. Nichols, did Mr. Yonker cover it? Okay, great. Summer, this one's for you. Under what circumstances would a parent request an ARD or IEP meeting? I'm sure there's lots of scenarios, but maybe just give some examples.
There are a lot of different scenarios where a parent might feel the need to call one of those meetings. So ARD meetings are held at least annually. So we do know that that's going to be one meeting per year. And then parents or staff members can call ARDs sooner than that. And like we've just been discussing, one of the reasons, especially at high school, that an ARD may be called is if we see a student who is in danger of not graduating, where they're not getting their credits. We see that they've been failing the 9-week period, and there's something else that we might need to address to provide services for that student. If there's ever questions about their accommodations or what is going on with their schedule, parents can always reach out to the case manager. But if there's a decision that needs to be made about an accommodation or about their specially designed instruction, the parent may wish to call an ARD meeting so that there can be that formal conversation about, this is the data that we have. These are the concerns that we have. How can we best address these? And the same goes for a 504 meeting, that if a parent has a question about a 504, the accommodations being done, or does my student need something else, they can reach out to the campus administrator so that they can follow up on those concerns. It's always good to communicate with the campus so that you can get your needs met.
Thank you so much. Angela, we're back to you with this one. Please give examples of what might be included in compensatory services.
Sure. Now, of course, it's challenging to give specific examples because every student is different. But I think one example that I think is definitely one that we see more often is students struggling in their speech and language skills, might have lost some skills due to the shutdown. And so we have had our speech therapists look at adding a couple sessions to their typical services above and beyond that, adding maybe 5 sessions of 30 minutes each to their school day of additional speech services to be implemented in a set period of time. Our goal, Jenny, is to really make sure that we're meeting students' needs immediately. And although we have until July to really complete any compensatory services that are indicated by the ARD, we are trying our best to make sure we're doing that as soon as possible and having those discussions as soon as possible. So we again ask parents to reach out to their campus if they have any questions or any concerns related to that.
Thank you. Jackie, this one's for you. Another behavior question. How are district board certified behavioral analysts, or BCBA, utilized in conducting functional behavior assessments and then developing a behavior intervention plan?
Oh, that's a great question. So we do have some board certified behavior analysts in our district and on our staff, and we value their expertise and we keep them very busy. We have a much greater need for functional behavioral assessments than what our BCBAs could do on their own. So we have definitely built capacity in our special education staff, and our case managers have been trained quite thoroughly, and they're also supported through our instructional behavior coaches to start those functional behavioral assessments. Our school psychologists work on our functional behavioral assessments, and we also call in BCBAs as needed as well. So it is a team effort, an FBA, and from that FBA, once we get all the data collected and we have an ARD, we look at a need for whether or not there needs to be a behavior intervention plan put in place for the student. Does anybody want to chime in from there?
If our principals want to share anything there. Sorry, I put you on the spot.
I'll share just one kind of more of a specific example. What I find too is when we have an FBA completed, our teachers are just experts at contributing to the plan, simply because they spend the most amount of time with the students and they can see what is typical for a student and what is not typical. They start to really find patterns in functions of their behavior, times when a behavior happens, what is causing the behavior, and what works well with the student. I have some incredible teachers on my campus that just really have become leaders, not only in my campus, but across the district in supporting behavior, because this is what they do day in and day out. So it truly is a team approach. And then when we develop the BIP, the behavior intervention plan, the case manager then communicates it to anyone who interacts with that student, so that we're all using strategies that are effective, that are research-based, and that we know are specifically appropriate for that student.
Thanks, Denise. That's great context. Angela, this one's for you, but I think this could even be a broader question that maybe Mandy or some other folks might want to join in with. What trainings have teachers and teachers of specialized services received specifically to navigate virtual learning?
Well, of course, we have been part of, our students are general ed first. So I think that's important to know that our teachers have access to all the same trainings that our general education teachers have access to, which includes Schoology, includes our iStation, Dreambox, and many other trainings that I'm sure our school administrators would be able to speak more readily to. But one of the things that I will say is that we make sure that our staff have access to their campus trainings, as well as we make sure that we support complementing those trainings with providing them how they can use that and support that through special education.
I want to jump in there real quickly before, certainly welcome campus administrators' input, but we also have a variety of experts, for lack of a better word, at our district level. So while our instructional coaches are fabulous, it's a small team of 3 instructional coaches, we also have an instructional technology specialist. We have 3 fabulous women who are experts at supporting our students in functional programming, and they've provided regular training through professional learning community meetings and drop-in office hours. We have behavioral coaches who have supported both our Achieve programs at the elementary and our focus support programs at secondary. So there's been a lot of training, sort of a continuum of services of training to sort of align with the continuum of services that we're providing at campuses.
I'm able to jump in and piggyback on that from a related services standpoint. I can tell you a lot of our therapists are utilizing their leads. We have a lead speech pathologist. We have 2 of them that serve that community. We also have a lead for our OT and PT department, and they're not only using those leads, our therapists are utilizing each other. I was able to sit in recently on a speech and language pathologist PLC meeting where they were utilizing Pear Deck, which is something that we've all grown to love during this virtual time. And they were each developing literacy units, utilizing Pear Deck, and the end result was really a literacy activity that could be, used and targeted for different therapy types or different speech goals. And because we have over 50 speech and language pathologists, we ended up putting those in a bank that our lead speech pathologists manage. So now all of our therapists have access to a bank of over 50 literacy activities that they can each utilize with their specific students that they serve.
Jenny,
oh, go ahead, Kimberly.
Okay, I'd like to add, I am just really impressed with Round Rock ISD's collective knowledge as a whole. And this virtual platform that we find ourselves in has been amazing for training. Normally on a campus, we provide our training for our staff, and then we ask and we outsource to district personnel and different people within the community for support. But what this has allowed us to do is to have you come into our schools much more often than we've typically had before. And then the power of recording these trainings and being able to access them at a later time for staff has been phenomenal. So just want to give a shout out for Round Rock ISD and being so forward thinking and so helpful.
Jenny, I can speak to the training that our dyslexia support professionals have received. Late last spring and through the summer, our Wilson trainer and our Wilson Just Words presenter facilitator worked with Wilson in the partnership we have with them to bring on training videos that Wilson had provided that walk you through the step-by-step processes that you can take with all the steps in the program to align it virtually should you be teaching this program with our virtual students. And we were able to push that out to our DSPs. We've offered real-time PLCs or professional learning community opportunities where we've sat and discussed, and not just for our Wilson folks, but also for our BLS folks in the district. We were able to attend one of their trainings virtually and bring back some of their information about how to implement their BLS program with effectiveness virtually for our students. So our team has been hard at work at that as well, and feel like we've been able to bridge that gap for such a specialized instruction through dyslexia programming.
And to piggyback on what Kimberly said in regards to our students that we serve through dyslexia, this week I actually got, or I guess last week because it's Monday, I got to sit in on a dyslexia intervention class with students in the virtual setting and in person. And as Jennifer had mentioned, through the use of Pear Deck, she was able to create a phenomenal lesson. I honestly couldn't tell a whole lot of difference besides a few students being on the computer and a few in person than I would in a traditional setting. She had the sound cards, and through Pear Deck, each student can make their own response individually, and then they can collectively discuss it. So it's not where one student gets to answer, all students get to answer at the same time on their independent slide deck. And so all students got to make their choice. She was able to make it extremely engaging and creative. And so just a shout out to the district for the Pear Deck licenses, a shout out to the training that our dyslexia interventionists have received, and then the time that they've had to develop those lessons. It really was a strong lesson and did not vary a ton from what I would see in an all in-person dyslexia. And it was through the Wilson program. So there really are ways to make it work for learners in both settings.
And back to Kim's point too about the training, I think that's something almost anyone could identify with in any industry. If there is a silver lining to this pandemic, it has really opened the door to virtual training, virtual meetings, allowing us to do things more efficiently, share them. You don't have to presently or be present. You can record and watch later. So I think everyone can identify with that, and that was a great anecdote for Rick to talk about how it's being used in the classroom as well. Staying with dyslexia for just a little bit, Jennifer, can dyslexia be a qualifying condition for special education services?
Oh, thanks for that question, Jenny. I know this can be confusing and tricky, so I'm going to take my best crack to explain this. We do have that we've referenced, we have under federal law and then the state's own administrative rules, we have 13 areas of eligibility or disability that we are allowed to evaluate for and identify students under, and this is for special education purposes. So of those 13 areas, dyslexia is not one of those 13 enumerated areas, but it is used in the definition of the federal regulations as an example that may manifest itself as a specific learning disability. Most commonly, when that does manifest, we see that manifest as a specific learning disability in basic reading or reading fluency. But also within that, there's nothing that prohibits within those federal regulations, there's nothing that prohibits us from utilizing the term in our evaluations or including a dyslexia evaluation within our own evaluation. So if that's a special education evaluation and we have a reading concern and we may be evaluating for a specific learning disability in any of the areas of reading, we can absolutely also include a dyslexia evaluation in that to see if your child meets that criteria with a condition of dyslexia as well.
Thank you. Summer, how is Round Rock ISD addressing having students participate in their own ARD meetings?
I love that question because one of the areas I help supervise is transition in our 18+ services. And it's one of my areas of passion about students being able to self-advocate. And there is a requirement as students get to be the age of 14 that they do participate in their own ARD meetings. It's so important for students to be able to gain that independence that's developmentally appropriate for them to advocate for themselves, because ultimately they are going to graduate and they're going to leave our school system. And if there are things that they need to be aware of, that it's helpful for them to be able to communicate that. And an ARD meeting or a 504 meeting is a great place to start practicing that. I know various campuses have some different decisions about, fifth graders who get to participate in the meetings, but as students get into middle school, you should start seeing them participate more in their meetings. And as they get into high school, what we would love to do is to see the student run their own meeting, but that can be a little bit intimidating. If you're at an ARD meeting, there's various teachers, administrators, and it can be it can put some students on edge to be able to present in front of everyone, but giving them that piece to be able to do it is so important. But whether or not they lead the meeting, they're always involved in their own transition planning, whether it's a written transition plan or a visual transition plan called a VTP. That is their opportunity to be able to meet with their parents and their case manager and really talk about what are their goals for life, what are they doing now to access their community and their education and their post-secondary needs. What do they need to be doing? If it's getting their state ID or if it's getting their driver's license, if they're interested in going to some kind of technical school or college, what are they doing now? And then what do they need help with to get there? So they talk about that as part of their transition planning, which helps guide and drive the rest of the ARD in developing their goals and their accommodations so that they can be successful. And those are reviewed every year. So we definitely want students to participate, and we encourage them to participate either through that transition process or if they're comfortable in leading parts of their own meeting.
So for those older elementary school, could a parent request for their child to be in the ARD meeting?
Certainly. A parent can request their child to be present at the ARD meeting. I have been in ARD meetings where students in 2nd and 3rd grade have even been there for parts of it. They may not want to be there for the whole thing, but the parts that they can be there, a parent can certainly request that because a parent has the right to invite whoever they would like to their ARD meeting.
And if I could chime in, I wanted to also, really give praise to our ARD facilitators who Summer supervises. We, they are educators as well. And when I sit in ARDS and watch what I see, especially at the middle and high school level, where we are getting our students ready to self-advocate by asking them to be a part of that transition discussion, they are so beautifully skilled at really encouraging the student and not overwhelming them with expectation that they're not ready for. So we have 4, 5, 6 years for a student to be able to work on that. And so we just sort of, at the student's comfort level, get them more and more ready to talk about what they want to do and who they want to be as adults. So I just wanted you to know that there's not a cookie cutter way to do that. Our facilitators really feed that off of the student and what they need.
They really tailor it to.
They do.
The transition plans, I'm wondering for those students heading to college, is there, and Dr. Acosta, you might know a little bit about this as well, but is there help in terms of resources, if they're moving on to college, about supports and accommodations they might need there?
Certainly, and I don't want to talk over Dr. Acosta, but that is part of the transition planning, is looking at what resources does that student need. If they're heading to a 2-year college or a 4-year college, how can we help connect them to the student support services? Special education is something that is provided through federal law, but it ends when a student graduates from high school. And special education doesn't follow you into college, but there are students who do need accommodations for various reasons. And those are done through 504, which you've heard that term earlier. In schools, we provide 504 accommodations, and post-secondary schools also offer 504 accommodations. So it's a great way to kind of be able to bridge that gap if they're able to access those student support services. And if the student is needing other types of supports and services, we offer community agency support. We have 2 excellent special education parent liaisons who help our families be able to connect to community agencies if we're looking at day habs or if we're looking at volunteer opportunities. We also offer 18+ services, where we have students who have met their credits for graduation, but they still need job coaching support. And we offer that for those students who the ART committee has said, you know what, we feel like these students need help with resume writing or with interviewing skills or being able to work. We've had an excellent partnership, I don't know if I'm with some of our local businesses, and being able to work with them in their different facilities that they have. And our job coaches they help teach the skill to the student, and then they're able to gain some meaningful employment. So there are different supports that are out there.
I'd like to jump in real quickly. Earlier, Summer talked about how important it is that our students are developing self-advocacy skills, and that attending their own ARDS as they approach graduation, so late middle school and into high school, is an important part of that. Part of the reason for that also is for our students who their long-term goals are either a 2-year or 4-year post-secondary institution. I talked earlier about in public schools, we have that child find obligation. We have to make sure that we are actively looking for students who have disabilities and a need for special education. Post-secondary education institutions don't have that. They're not responsible for reaching out and finding kids and making sure kids know about their rights. So once a young adult goes to a 2-year college or a 4-year college or a tech school, those self-advocacy skills really come into play at that point, because it becomes the responsibility of the young adult to then seek out the Office for Students for Disabilities at a college or at a community college. And so that sort of that onus of that responsibility really transfers from public school to post-secondary.
That's awesome. That we're training them for that. We understand that, and we're training them and giving those skills now. Dr. Acosta, I didn't want to put you on the spot. Did you want to add anything?
No, ma'am, I would never be able to add more than those 2 experts there. I think it's just one of my favorite anecdotal pieces of sitting in ARDS over the years as we reach graduation, and having seen the fruition of the work of the child, their parent, and the school system and all the teachers. And when we start having that conversation, you're going to take this document to this office at that university. And, I've been a part of many of those specific tangible moments. And so it plays out exactly as they described with these human seniors, knowing exactly where to take exactly which forms. wear once they get to university. So that's always one of my favorite moments of the high school experience.
Well, don't unmute just yet because the next question's for you. Who should I reach out to if I have concerns about my students' accommodations for SAT, PSAT, ACT, or the test day schedule?
Yes, ma'am. I again would advise that you would reach out to your campus principal. We across the district are guided always by our area superintendents, by our assessment department, which all, of course, Miss Estes and everybody in her team there. But at the same time, each of us in the 5 comprehensives and then our other high schools have to design our assessments based on the needs of each of our own individual communities. So I would always advise starting with your principal or the assistant principal that is, assigned to testing, one of those two, because we of course are, again, as a district, testing as common as possible, but from campus to campus, more kids show up in person on one campus than in another, which changes the plan slightly. So I think that each of those kind of specific campus-based conversations would be best directed at the campus principal, so they could talk through the specifics of that.
Thank you, Dr. Acosta. Angela, back to you. Is extended school year available for educational skills progression or only for life skills?
I actually just responded to that question in writing, but absolutely, we do look at educational skills as well, but we're really looking at those pre-academic functional skills, the prerequisite skills for students, and those critical skills that would be required for students to be able to not lose or not be able to maintain skills that would keep them in a least restrictive environment based on their individual needs. So we definitely want to make sure that those skills are really focusing on keeping those students from not needing additional support or prompting support or requiring to be in a more restrictive placement, whether it be one of our low incidence disability placements or one of our looking at one of our behavior supports. And we definitely want to make sure that we're supporting the students as a whole child and really looking at all of their needs in terms of the critical skills before a break, and then whether or not they're able to recoup those in a reasonable period of time.
And I want to follow up what Angela said with, there are many of us in education and many parents who see what we have sort of, termed the summer slide. All students who leave out for the summer, there's going to be some regression that's very typical. The difference with how a student might then become eligible for extended school year is the amount of time it takes that student and the educational team serving that student for the kiddo to catch up, back up on those skills, to recover those skills. So every single grade level, every single August and early September, teachers are, okay, let's review where we left off at the end of last year. That's built into our curriculum. And most students are able to catch right back up and then, okay, I'm ready to take on to, move to the next grade level curriculum and skills. If a student can't catch up in a reasonable amount of time, that's when we start looking at gathering that educational team together as an ARD committee to make a determination if extended school year is necessary.
And I know I mentioned before, we've had folks behind the scenes answering questions because we do know some of these questions are so individualized, and some of our panelists are doing double duty or answering live and answering privately or directly. I just wanted to save a little space if there's any sort of themes you were seeing that maybe you can summarize or just a point you feel like would really be important to make. Maria, I don't know if you have any of your directors you want to kind of point to for that, or if you guys just want to unmute and let me know if you have something that you want to make sure those listening know or have information about.
Sure, and I think this is something that we have said in many different ways this evening, so forgive me if it's not new information. But all of special education hinges on individualized decision making. And so while certainly there are processes we want to put in place and there are procedures that we need to adhere to, there are a lot of laws to make sure that we're being very, very diligent about compliant with. Ultimately, it is the job of each child's educational team, of which a parent is a crucial part, to make decisions individual to that child. So while we do want to talk in some generalities about things to make sure we're answering the questions, please, if you have questions about your child's program of services, reach out to the campus team who knows your child best. We want to work with you.
Thank you. Anyone else have anything to add?
Yeah, Jenny, I haven't said much. I really would just want to thank all the folks that are on the call tonight. I've been amazed since I've been in Round Rock for 12 years of the special education experts that we have in the district. First as a principal and then as a chief of schools and now as an acting superintendent. And I can tell you that the thing that really came to my attention when I came here is that Round Rock ISD for many, many years has been a magnet for folks when they move to Central Texas. I need some great services for my kid. And it's all the folks on the call tonight and the folks that were in the seats before them that have provided that. And it's been really an attraction to come to Round Rock. If you have a student who has special needs, come to Round Rock, you're going to get served. And, you know, there are mistakes along the way. We don't get everything exactly right all the time. But I think just as acting superintendent right now, and my lens goes back only 12 years. Many of the folks on the call have been in the district much longer than me. But it's sort of been people internationally, as a principal, internationally, they're moving to Central Texas for a job in technology or whatever their career trajectory was, and they need to find a place for their kids to go to school, and they pick Round Rock. So I can't thank all of you enough. As a granddad in the district now with a granddaughter who's, you know, less than a year old, I'm very proud she's in Round Rock, and I don't know if she'll need special services, but I just want to tell folks that we've been a magnet for special services. And I know Mr. Yonker who's on the call, Ms. Nichols who's on the call, as area superintendents who have been principals have found that people move to Round Rock because they want to receive the services that we provide. And once again, not that we're perfect all the time, but that we're within the law, we're ethical, everybody's doing everything that they can do to serve our kids. And the paramount thing for everybody is making sure that kids get what they need. It's an equity piece that every kid gets what they need. And so I want to thank Dr. Bone for being on the call tonight. She didn't have to take her time. I spent the whole weekend with Dr. Bone in a training. So she's now Saturday, Sunday, and now Monday night. But I just wanted to say those few things that I appreciate Marie and all your efforts and your team. We know we have a lot of expertise in the district. We're doing the best we can for every kid that we have. The pandemic has complicated things, obviously, and we still have a lot of questions that we can answer and traject those answers forward. But I would be remiss if I didn't thank all the principals who are on the call late tonight, and the area superintendents and all of the special ed staff and the amazing job that you do, because that was once again the thing to me after 35 years coming to Round Rock. It's like, why do all these people want to come to us? It's because we provide these amazing services. And not that we can't continue to improve and get better, but, and Manny, I'm going to pitch it to you because I've said too much, but I wanted to compliment you and your team and make sure everybody on the call tonight, the principals, the area superintendents, and all the folks in the SPED world know how much they are appreciated.
Thank you, Dr. Presley. And I wanted to acknowledge there's a person on the call tonight that hasn't had an opportunity to speak, and that's Mr. Dwayne Street. He's our new Chief Equity Officer. And the reason he's here on the call with us is we are working with Mr. Street, Marie and I, Mr. Street, on finding some opportunities to marry our two worlds, equity and special education services. He's come to us with some ideas. We also have brought some ideas to him. And I see you unmiked, Mr. Street, so I'll let you say a few words too.
Thank you, Mandy. I want to echo what a lot of Dr. Presley said. I've been very impressed. I've been in the district a short time, but the conversation here tonight lifts up a lot of the components of equity. You know, we talk about equity is about making sure that every child has what they have what they need when they need it. Well, that starts with conversations. I mean, we can't always think about everything, but this group is very good about making the adjustment. As Dr. Presley said, we're not perfect, but we're reflective practitioners. And the thing about reflective practitioners is you have to commit yourself to being better tomorrow than you are today. We're all imperfect, but we're striving to get better so we can better serve our community. So I'm looking forward to the connective tissue between my practice and Marie's practice. Mandy and I have meetings set up. So this is very encouraging hearing this conversation tonight, because this is how equity should play out. It should be a conversation that leads to enhanced practice. So thank you, Mandy.
Thank you. And I wanted to give, I'm sorry, Mandy, if you had some more comments. Okay, I want to give Trustee Bone time to say a few words as well. We appreciate you joining us tonight.
Sure. I just really want to say thank you to everyone that's on the call. Thank you, Dr. Presley and Jenny, for setting this up, and just thank you, staff. It is appreciated spending your evening with us. And Mr. Street, thank you. I echo what you say, that we're just starting the conversation with this tonight. And as a trustee, I look forward to working with the community and really bridging the community with the district to ensure that all of our students are receiving the resources and the services to be successful. And I just hope the community sees that, you know, you have a lot of support here. Really, you can reach out to anybody that you see on this call, on this screen, and we'll all direct you to the right people. I would say start with your principal usually, or your team, but you know, we're here to help you. So hopefully, you know, if you're feeling frustrated, you can always come to a trustee, and we're definitely that bridge that can shoot it off to Jenny or somebody else and get what you need. And as Dr. Presley said, you know, there's questions I see that are still open, and I know, Jenny, that you'll make sure those are answered, because you do a great job of doing that. So again, we really do appreciate everybody. So thank you for letting me speak for a minute.
Yes, we're capturing all these questions. And as I've said at every town hall, all the questions really help inform our communication practices. This is probably the most sort of specialized area that we're looking at. So we'll make sure that Marie and her team have all of those and have the ability to reach out and communicate. And I know they do a great job, but even better to our families. And I want to remind everyone again that the recording will be available on the website, so you can share it if you have someone that you thought, man, I wish my friend or neighbor would have seen this. It was just really helpful. We'll also, it takes a little time to get this done, but we will have transcriptions both in English and Spanish. So if that's easier for someone to actually just have a document to scan through, we'll have that available as well. So once again, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you. And we hope to do more of these opportunities in the future so that we can have this two-way communication with our community. Thanks again and have a great night.